Hello friend, this is Ryan Hicks of TalkToProfit.com, and for this Reseller Friday I want to talk to you about some questions I get asked about packing and shipping. Now, it's been so long since I first started packing items up and shipping them, decades now. I don't even remember how I first got started. I don't remember how well I did. I'm sure like with anything new, it probably wasn't anywhere near as good as it is today. But there's some basic things that I've learned, and here's one of the ways you can learn. So if I don't mention some particular item that you happen to sell, here's one of the ways you can learn the best. So let's say you sell postcards, and you're wondering, how does somebody ship a postcard? Do you just throw it in an envelope with no protection? Do you throw it in with some cardboard? Do you have some other type of poster board or something you put in there to give it a little bit more rigidity so it doesn't get bent? What do you do? Well, you could put cardboard in there and that definitely would help, but it makes it less flexible in going through the machines. It might get jammed up in the machines, might cause it to get damaged or lost completely. So maybe that's not the way to go. Maybe that is the way to go. Here's one of the ways you would tell. If you know nothing at all, whatever item you're selling, you're wondering how do I get this shipped properly, is to go and buy it from other sellers who are selling it, who have good feedback. And there's no people in their feedback complaining about, oh, it was shipped poorly or whatever. Buy it from them so you can actually see, yes, you're investing some money in your business because you're learning from how somebody who's a pro, and make sure somebody has a lot of feedback. Not somebody has 100 feedback, but somebody has tens of thousands of feedback. They probably know what they're doing. And so you buy from them, you see how they shipped it. Oh, okay. Now you got a good idea. Or maybe you just naturally buy that type of item and you've seen how some sellers pack it, now other sellers pack it, and which one you liked best. I'll give you an example. I had a collectible item that I used to ship out, and we shipped out tens of thousands of them a year. And a couple customers mentioned, this is a paper-based collectible item, that it got wet in their mailbox. Now, obviously that's not my fault. I didn't do anything to the package. They were just going in an envelope. But from that point, when I heard that, I thought, there's a way I can make this better. And so I started putting them in a customized sized Ziploc bag so they could get rained on all day long and the envelope might waste away, but that item, that collectible item inside, would not be damaged in the least. It was protected. But that's one of those things that just came from doing it. And I had tried buying the same collectible items from other sellers, and they just threw them in an envelope, and that worked fine. And it works fine for 99.99% of the cases. But in some cases, somebody's mailbox is a little bit weird, or the door is left open and rain got in there. Somehow it got rained on and it got damaged. That's something to note. I'll give you another example. I've bought hats off of eBay before, and some sellers literally throw the hat in a poly bag and it arrives all crumpled up and crushed and looks terrible. Now for me, presentation is a big part of it, because when somebody opens the box to the item they bought from you, if the item's all crushed and crumpled and looks like trash, that is not a good presentation, and it's more likely to lead to you getting a negative feedback because you didn't properly protect the item. You didn't properly ship it by throwing a hat in a poly bag. So I ship hats, and I ship a lot of hats out in boxes. Depending on the hat size, you can get 8x6x4, you can get 8x6 or so. It doesn't matter as long as the box fits it and it protects the hat properly. Now you may say, well, doesn't that add a little bit of cost to the shipping? Yes, but the purpose of the shipping is to get the item to the customer in the form you represented it as. So if it looks perfect in the pictures you have on the listing that somebody bought it from you, and you throw it in a poly bag and it arrives all crumpled up and looks like trash, that is easily an item not as described if the customer is unhappy with it or doesn't know how to fix the hat and get it back to its proper form. Part of our resale business is to provide the best value for the customer. That's not providing the best value. So put it in a box, do it right the first time, it'll give a better experience for the customer, and it will avoid you a lot of headaches and problems and returns and item not as described, and whatever problems you might have because you're not shipping things properly. What about larger items? I've shipped printers, I've shipped TVs, and I'm not talking about modern TVs that are thin and weigh almost nothing. Even like a 60-inch TV will weigh a few pounds, like 5-10 pounds or something, just very light. I'm talking about big CRT, cathode ray tube TVs, retro TVs, and I've shipped those things. How do you ship those things and get them to arrive safely? Well, obviously nothing's guaranteed, but one of the ways you can do it, and yes, it does add more cost to the shipping, but you should properly, when you're listing the item, add some dimensions so you know you don't have to box up each item as you're listing it. But you should at least know, okay, I'm going to need some extra room here. So like in a big item like that, maybe you need an extra 6 inches all around for the padding you're going to use, for the double boxing you might do. Make sure you give enough and add enough pounds, 4 or 5 pounds if it's a big heavy item, because the boxes are going to weigh a couple pounds, maybe 2 or 3 pounds, maybe more. Make sure you add that into the shipping so when they are paying and you're not having some flat rate on big items like that, because you need calculated shipping on those kind of items, because what if it's going to Alaska? I had a medical item. It was I guess for somebody who can't get out of bed properly or whatever, and somebody's helping them, they put their feet on this thing and the person turns it and it kind of helps them get up. Not 100% sure exactly how it works. It's been a while since I had that item, but I got it for $5 at a thrift store and sold it for $300 or something like that. And the shipping, because I had calculated shipping, was over $400 because it was big and it was heavy. If I had some flat rate and just guessed at $100, I would have lost everything. It would have been completely a dud after all the fees and everything. It would have been zero profit. It would have been negative profit. So on some of these items, you need to be careful. If you don't know exactly how big it's going to be when it's packed totally and the weight and everything, make sure you have enough cushion there so you're not going to lose money on the shipping. And for those big things like that, double box them. I double box big things like that a lot because it adds an extra layer of protection. So basically what double boxing means, it should be obvious from the wording of it, but say you bubble wrap an item, you put it in a box, and then you bubble wrap that box, or you put packing material or something into a new box that's bigger, and then you put that box you have the item packed in into the new box with the packing material, put the packing material all around it and on top of it, and then seal that up. And that's the shipment that you ship out. That provides a lot of protection. It avoids it getting damaged. And another thing I'll add, and this may not make much sense at first until you hear me explain this, and please keep in mind, I am very bare bones about my business. I want to use the least amount of money possible on expenses. So what I'm suggesting to you is not for you to waste money. It is an actual valuable tip that will help you make more money and help you prevent losses in the future with your shipments. So I will leave a link to what I'm about to describe in the description so you can buy the exact items I use that will help you in this regard. But invest in some do not bend or do not drop, depending on the item you're selling, fragile stickers. Now, the reason why I say this is because I've had items get damaged before, even though I packed them well. And there's the thing you understand. Don't beat yourself up. Sometimes you pack an item perfectly and it just gets beaten up in transit and there's nothing you can do about it. Years ago, I was selling some exercise equipment, brand new in the box. And literally, the UPS driver, as he's walking from my house, taking the item, it's a big heavy item, about 100 pounds, he tripped and fell onto it. And I found parts of that item in the yard later. So it got damaged before it even left my property in UPS's hands. And that item was factory packaged and factory sealed as safely as it could be. But one of the items I had that I shipped and it was packed well and it arrived damaged, and the customer said this to me: if you'd written fragile on the box, it wouldn't have been damaged. Now, I've shipped hundreds of thousands of items over the years. That is not true in the least. But the customer believes it's true. The customer believes that putting fragile on a box gives it some sort of greater protection and is treated better by the company shipping it. It's not the case. It's not treated any better, and in many cases it might be treated worse. But the reason why you put the fragile sticker on the item is so that customer, when they see it, it is another thing that looks like you did your best to ultimately get that item to them safely. So if it does arrive damaged, they're less likely to be angry with you because you didn't do everything you could to make sure it arrives safely, because in their view, putting fragile on the box would have guaranteed it arrived safely. So these are little things that you learn just from doing, but they can be very beneficial to you, and it can avoid you having an angry customer. Customer's not going to be happy if their item's damaged, but if they see you packed it well and you put fragile stickers on it, you did everything you could to make sure it arrived safely, and it didn't arrive safely, they're more likely to be understanding and gracious with you instead of just leaving you some negative feedback and trashing you. You might be able to work things out with them a little bit better in that situation because you've done everything right. And the basic thing with packing is you want to get the item to the customer safely as possible, and so that it arrives to the customer's door in the same condition as when you shipped it. So you can't throw a hat into a poly bag and expect it to arrive in the same condition that you put it in, because it's going to be crumpled up and whatever. It's not a good experience for the customer. For breakable items, you want to make sure you've packed them, and many times double boxing is the way to go. Use bubble wrap, use whatever packing material that will work best for that particular item. Even if it costs you a little bit more on the shipping cost, you want to make sure the item gets to the customer safely so they have a good experience. There are things that don't matter. A shirt, for example, you could throw that in a poly bag. It's not going to get damaged in shipping. If it does get damaged, it's going to be something that would have gotten damaged probably anyway. The machine eats it or something, Not a lot you can do about that. And with shirts, for example, it could be just a matter of how you pack the shirt that prevents it from being damaged. Most shirts obviously aren't going to be damaged, but Western style pearl snap shirts with the snaps for buttons, and they have the pearl style. It's not made out of pearls, but it looks like a pearl style, some sort of ceramic or glass or something. That can get damaged in shipping when it's getting bounced around and those snaps are hitting other things. They could get broken. So you fold the shirt in such a way that the shirt is providing the insulation and protection from those snaps hitting anything else in the outside external part of the package. That's just a simple thing you can do as far as your packing goes that potentially avoids an item being damaged. So just use some common sense. And like I said, if you don't know the best way to ship a particular item, maybe you got some rare, unique item, you don't have to buy from other sellers. You can contact sellers. I've had sellers contact me and ask me how to ship stuff. I've had sellers contact me and ask me about a particular item. I help them. I don't care. Technically, they're competition, but I'm not worried about it. There's an abundance out there. I'm happy to help somebody else out. They're asking me for help. Why wouldn't I want to help them? So you may not even have to buy any of those type of items. Maybe there's not even any out there that you could buy. Maybe there's too expensive or something like that. You could at least ask some sellers for some help. How would you properly pack this? I have this item and I want to make sure I pack it properly when I ship it. They might ignore you. They might tell you no, but you never know. You might just ask. Ideally, it would be best to buy it from one of those sellers so you actually experience what the seller is actually doing. So you can see what you liked about it too, because there's something about when you get it and the experience of opening it that will give you a lot of wisdom into how you want to do it properly, how you want to make sure it arrives safely. Is there something they did that was better than you would even imagined? Is there something they did that made it worse and you could have done it a little bit differently and made it better? These are all things you can learn from experience, from buying the actual item and testing it out. Now, I'm not telling you to go buy every item, but if you're selling books, maybe go buy from a few booksellers. Now, I'll tell you what most booksellers do. They just throw it in a poly bag. They don't put much effort into it. But if you have higher value items, you might want to bubble wrap them. At least put them in a bubble mailer so they're a little more protected. Because I sell books that are sometimes more valuable, I'll put them in a box. That way they don't get damaged in shipping, because I buy a lot of books and I don't want them to get all damaged and the corners crushed, especially when I'm buying an expensive book. So some of it depends on the value of the book. If the book's in acceptable condition already, it probably doesn't matter. If the book is rare and antique and high dollar, even if it's in acceptable condition, the customer doesn't want it damaged any more than it already is. So you want to put that in a box or some secure form where it can't get its corners and anything else wrecked in it. The main thing to focus on and to take away from this is that you do your best in however you package it to ensure that it arrives to the customer safely in the same condition that they are expecting it to arrive in. The same condition you listed it as, that is what they should receive when they open their package. Now, let me also leave you with some tips on what not to do, because sometimes knowing what not to do can help you a lot in knowing what to do. Do not ship stuff, and this may sound insane, but there are people who have actually done this. Do not ship items in used pizza boxes. Do not ship them in cereal boxes. Now, you can reuse boxes. Say you get Amazon boxes or some other boxes from orders you have, and the box is clean. You can reuse those boxes, but you need to be cautious about how you reuse them and which boxes you reuse. If the box is trash, don't use it. If it's got stains on it, don't use it. If your cat's been sleeping in it, it's got a bunch of cat hair in it, don't throw a shirt in there and expect your customer to be happy. Use some common sense in that regard. I've seen people take like envelopes and make a weird amalgamation of an envelope, like cutting 4 different envelopes, trying to make it all to fit around an item by using a bunch of envelopes. That looks like trash, and it oftentimes gets jammed up in the system. Very likely your item could get damaged or completely lost. If you have to, invest a little bit of money in some poly bags or bubble mailers or something that will make your item be safe and protected and look good and high quality. Doesn't mean you can't reuse boxes, but don't use old food boxes. Don't use an old food bag or something, a McDonald's bag or something. Just use some common sense. I ordered an item one time, a very high-end jacket from a very high-end website. It was pre-owned, no big deal. And it arrived with cat fur all over it. So do some basic preparation. Run a lint roller over a shirt if you have it already. If it's got cat fur or hair, human hair or whatever, it doesn't matter what it is. Make sure it's as clean as possible. You know, for example, with clothing, it's supposed to be cleaned before you list it. You're not supposed to be listing dirty items. That doesn't mean you can get every item perfect, but try to clean it as best you can according to the manufacturer's instructions. Make sure your presentation is good so when the customer gets it, they're getting a good experience. That should be ever present in your mind when you're packing an item. How can I get this to my customer in the best possible way so they will have the best experience and get the item that is exactly what they were expecting to get? Do that and you'll have happy customers and you will have a great experience as a reseller. You'll make a lot of money and you'll be very successful. I pray this is a blessing for you. May God bless you richly.